Welcome to the Innovation Conversation, a podcast about innovators, both in business and real life. Hosted by myself, Ricardo Pascual, and Harry McDonough. This podcast is also sponsored by ODEV Tech. ODEV Tech is your premier software development partner. Make sure you check them out at odev.tech. The podcast is also sponsored by Notion.so. Notion is offering 6 months for free for new users. Make sure you check out our website, thestartupevents.co.uk, to redeem this offer.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Innovation Conversation. Today we are joined by Giulio Zecca. Giulio, welcome to the podcast.
Ricardo, very happy to be here.
Giulio, would you like to introduce yourself to the audience, please?
Yeah, I'm Giulio Zecca. My name might give it away. I'm Italian. I was born and raised in Rome, which is a great city, as a tourist, as I always say. Otherwise, I will still be living there. And then I decided to have other experiences, which brought me to France, and then London, and then Rotterdam in the Netherlands, and then finally in Madrid, where I spend most of my time, even if my company is still based in the Netherlands, so I have to stay there, and traveling quite a lot for my international customers. So that's pretty much what I'm doing. Long story short, I graduated with honors in computer engineering because I think my purpose, which still is, I still believe technology and innovation are a way to serve a greater purpose, which is not always done. So that's why I love being in podcasts like yours that speak about entrepreneurship, innovation, because there are examples like this where things can really be done and where technology can really help people, work, society. It depends. I mean, everyone has a different purpose, but there is something more than just adding a couple of megabytes to the capacity of our smartphone or the pictures that we do. And in all this, I'm what some people call management consultant or business advisor. What I like to say is that basically it's funny how I'm managing director, CEO, they talk to me and they want to understand what's going on in their companies, because decisions and visions that are taken at high level most of the time don't really drip down as they should, and so they get lost in and slip between the cracks. And so they want to know what's going on, they want to really understand, and then see and carry out and move forward improvements that nobody has the time for. That's in a nutshell, but we can explore even further.
Okay, so it's quite interesting because you have a background that you travel across all of Europe. You've done business in all of Europe. You're now settled in Madrid. Which, I have tons of questions about that. Well, you also, in the process, actually know a lot of startups and advise a lot of business. So, I guess the first question for me is: are there major differences between doing business in the Netherlands, Italy, Spain, the UK, or actually, when it comes down to it, it's all pretty much the same thing?
Well, that's a question for 3 podcasts probably, but 3 episodes. I would say, to narrow it down, yes, there are differences. Some are cultural differences, which are inevitable, and probably is what makes us rich as a continent, I would say. If you're just talking about Europe, for example, the first things and probably you don't even need to live in Spain to notice that, is that Spain is a relational country. It means they favor relation over transaction. So you need to know, what does it mean? You need to know people to get to know other people and have a lot of coffees. I mean, I've got a friend who moved here and it's like, Giulio, here is all about, let's keep on talking. It's like, let's keep on talking. Let's get a coffee. Let's get over lunch. Okay, but when do they do business? I mean, they're just taking beers and having lunch and having breakfast and having coffee and talking and going to events. But when is the business happening? Well, the business is happening besides and beyond these steps. I mean, in England, we have small talk. Besides some small talk, there are some unwritten rules, even if someone started codifying them and giving hints, but there are some unwritten rules of what you should or should not say in small talk.
It's mostly about the weather, isn't it?
It's mostly about the weather. Yeah. Exactly. And there's also a way to respond to that. There is this super funny page that I absolutely love. It's called VIP, Very British Problems, VBP. And it talks about this guy, asked him and say, it's getting colder, isn't it? And he said, no, it's actually quite warm. That's unpolite. You're expected to say something along the lines and to agree with me. It's a very British way. But, I mean, some people make fun of it. But at the end of the day, it's a sort of codified social rule, social norm, where you get to small talk, you talk about something, and then bam, you get into the business. Now, the equivalent of small talk in Spain or in Italy could be quite the same. It's sit down, talk about you, talk about what you do, talk about different things, talk about society, get a coffee, then get another coffee, then probably get a lunch. And I mean, it can take forever. And the main difference is you never know if and when a relation, so in a relational country, is going to get to some business. It's great because you meet a lot of people, they open a lot of doors. I mean, if you're nice and you get together well, they open a lot of doors, they open up opportunities, you keep on knowing people, you keep on growing. And I mean, the thing I noticed moving from the Netherlands to Madrid is that in the Netherlands, it's super rigid. It's yes or no. I mean, there's not even that kind of small talk that you would have in London. So it's like, it's interesting. Yes, no. It's very, I mean, Dutch people are very pragmatic. It needs to be cheap and functional. I mean, quite the opposite if you think as Italy. Italy, I mean, culturally speaking and traditionally speaking, of course, a huge generalization, which I think we're also losing as a country. It's like thinking about beauty, think about context, the form, rather than being cheap and functional. It's like, how can it be well done and elegant? So, first cultural clash, coming from Italian background to the Netherlands, then moving from the Netherlands, which is like, yes or no, good or bad, does it work, does it not work? Move to Madrid, well, it's like, okay, let's build a relation, and then we'll see. This is the cultural part. And then there's I'll say the practical part or bureaucratic part. It's like, I mean, if you live in London, you know that to set up a company takes probably 15 minutes. Last time I checked, it was 50 quid, 50 pounds. So, but that's it, done. That doesn't mean you are a businessman and that your business is going great, but that really means that in 15 minutes you can have a company. In Spain or in Italy, it takes quite a lot more.
And a lot of money as well, right? It takes the initial investment just for setting up the company.
Taking initial investment. Now, they're changing rules because they're trying to adapt and to be a bit more, have an approach that is more lean. You still need to declare that you have like, I think, 3,000 or 5,000 euro invested in the company to start. Now the media saw that you don't have to actually, you have to put this money in the company, but then you can reinvest in the company, so they don't have to stay there in the company's account. But still is a barrier. And even if you want to set up as a sole trader, I mean, in Spain, the taxes you need to pay for different things, like monthly is like about 300 euro. So think about someone who wants to start a business. Young guy, young girl, like in their 20s. Okay, I got this idea, let me try it. 300 euro a month just to get started.
It's a lot of money.
It hurts. A lot. A huge lot. I mean, I was coming from a management career in the Netherlands, which is honestly pretty well paid. And yet that was a concern for me. I mean, if I had to pay 300-ish euro a month just to see if my idea could float, I would be really concerned. And to be honest, in hindsight, it would really have had an impact on my finances, because I got off the plane of a management career and said, okay, let's find something else. I want to do something else. I want to have an impact in a different way, in a more concrete way than as a cog in a company. And I would do that advising other companies. But I launched myself, I ejected myself from the plane without having clients, I had a plan, but as you may know in entrepreneurship, yes, I got a great plan, but well, welcome to reality, it's totally different. That would have had a real impact. Time, investment in time and in money in the different countries is very different. In the Netherlands, it's much more similar to the UK. It's not that fast, but it's almost as cheap and is relatively fast. I mean, in a matter of a week or so, you got your company. You got it's easier to deduct business expenses as long as they are sound business expenses. I mean, not weird stuff, of course, that's in any country. And another thing that I quite like about the system is that the mentality and the practical things, as we said, bureaucracy, for example, are set up for success. If you listen to the World Bank, they show stats and data of how countries where there are different hurdles and obstacles for entrepreneurship and for setting up a business are the ones who are struggling the most in general with innovation, with different parameters. And I don't remember the exact data at the moment, so I'll better not share something that I'm not exactly sure about, but at that moment, I was making a clear comparison between Italy and the Netherlands and see how, in actual fact, not having this business mentality brings the industry backwards or does not allow the industry to progress and to flourish.
I've heard many horror stories across Europe. I was talking with someone who works in investment, and he was saying he comes from Slovenia, and he was saying, for example, in Slovenia, it's very common for an investor to actually want 50% of your business. And as a startup, you think, well, hold on, I need to give 50% of my business. And I said, how much money? What's the normal ticket size? 400K. So for 100K, I give 50% of my business. It's absolutely ludicrous. You don't want to set up a business that way. And I'm just thinking a couple of years back, I was very much into film. And in Portugal, at the time, just like in Spain, you needed to pay monthly if you decided to be, I guess, with the expression, to be self-employed. And this filmmaker literally told me, I'm down in the local finance offices. I put myself as a cleaner instead as a filmmaker because a cleaner pays less taxes than a filmmaker. I cannot support myself as a filmmaker, so I just put myself as a cleaner. But these are all legal, barriers to actually launching businesses and to growing the economy.
That's, I don't know, it's, as you said, it's ludicrous and it shouldn't happen, but then different countries, different norms, different rules, different backgrounds. When I mean background, I mean also how did this society and economy evolve in that country. I mean, it's easy to say it shouldn't be like that. I mean, who are we to judge? But yes, there are ways to make it more factual and better from entrepreneurial point of view. Spain has done a big leap last year for having a new law for startups. Of course, there's someone who's saying it is still not enough. Brilliant. I mean, probably true, but okay, that's already something to have more people start their own business with some kind of safety net. Because that's a huge, I mean, we talked about the cultural background and the bureaucratic background, but what's the impact of that? Because that's the most important thing, because otherwise we're just talking philosophy. The impact of that is that people do not develop an entrepreneurial kind of mindset. People do not launch themselves in the cold water trying to invent something new or trying to bring something new to the table. In countries like, again, Italy or Spain, because I just know these countries quite well, maybe Portugal and definitely other countries in the world would have a similar pattern. Whereas, and I talk about a continent that I know a little bit because I also traveled to Tunisia and Kenya for work, in Africa and to some extent Latin America, they have this entrepreneurial mindset because they have no other way. I mean, for evolutionary reason, talking about work, how work evolved, they do not have the comfort of, okay, I get an employment and I get that and I get my salary and that's it. This is something very, very recent. If you go to Kenya, this is actually some economists and some people, sociologists are saying this is one of the things that's been detrimental to a place like Kenya, to a country like Kenya that has huge potential, because people are now getting what's happening in Kenya now. It's a kind to what happened in Italy, Spain around this in 1960. people start getting employments. They get more government job. They get more companies that start to be big, relatively, or let's say big enough to start hiring enough people. People get hired. They get an employment. They get more security. The good side of things is that then now they can invest in a mortgage to buy a house, so they can build their own house or buy their own house, which is great because it helps the economy move. Sort of process of gentrification. But outside of the coin is they're starting to indulge in wealth and vices or bad habits that we know now are bad habits, like 3 cars per family when you're just 2 family members, too much TV, binge eating, junk food, and all this kind of status symbol food that is like, okay, I can afford it, so I can waste food. And that's absolutely bad because their health is declining, their habits are declining, and it's absolutely bad. And most of all, to get back to our initial topic, they are losing their entrepreneurial spirit. But the ones who still have that entrepreneurial spirit, because again, they come from a situation where they had no other choice. You had to go out there and find a way to get money, to earn your money, to sell something. So when I see European fellows or going to places like Kenya or Philippines, I had someone I know very well went to Philippines last summer. There can be some similarities in the situation. It's like, all these vendors that keep on telling me, you want to buy this? Then I can give this other thing. I can give this for a discount, but okay, you bought this, then but what about this one? It's a massive class in entrepreneurship and sales. It's cross-selling, upselling, adapting to the customer, understanding your customer needs, reading your customer, which not all of them are good at, and being persistent in face of no. There's no, okay, no to this. So what about that? Then don't take it personally. That's absolutely great. And honestly, I think I'm quite sure, the 2 biggest startup ecosystems in Africa are in Nairobi, the capital of Kenya, and in Nigeria. And I think that's absolutely brilliant because they still got this inherited attitude to entrepreneurship, to selling, and this hunger of conquering something, even if it's a status or if it's something more than what they come from, generationally speaking. But at the same time, now with internet, artificial intelligence, broadband, they got access through internet, they got access to resources and a market that was unimaginable before. So they got probably say there's not the same thing as someone who's in the Silicon Valley. Okay, probably. But they have almost the same conditions in terms of technology and access to technology and access to the market, and they have a spirit that is unstoppable. And this is one of the reasons why they say Africa is the next continent coming up. And watch out, because it's going to be, if it keeps on going as it is, because I don't have a crystal magical ball where I can see, but it's going to be next continent. It's going to be absolutely great. And some startups in Nigeria and Kenya are doing great things and are getting from there. I know a couple that went from Nigeria to Y Combinator, and I was supposed to advise one of them, then they got lost somehow. Things that happen. And I was speaking with the CEO, and they were doing great things. Being in operations, the CEO was fascinated about what I do. I was fascinated about what they were doing. So I said, you could be a great advisor. But from Nigeria, scaling nationally, and bam, Y Combinator, the most successful and the biggest and most renowned accelerator in the Silicon Valley. So that happens, and that's going to have a huge impact.
It's funny we're talking about Nigeria, because literally my last guest is actually a massive player in the Nigerian ecosystem. So we were just talking about that literally last week. Uche and Ichi, if you want to listen in. And I'll make sure to make it to you, Giulio, as well.
That's nice.
It's funny you were talking about the way they move so fast, but I remember a couple of years ago, people were discussing how using mobile apps was the rate of adoption in Europe was actually slower than the rate of adoption in countries like Nigeria. The reason being was we're still stuck on the laptop in Europe, because in there, they completely, they don't have a personal computer, like, ooh, a phone, I can do everything from my phone, awesome. Let me start doing a lot more stuff on my phone. So the rate of people using their phones and the for example, mobile banking at the time was actually crazy, because everyone was just using their phones, because it did the job. And it was so much better and, much more efficient for the ecosystems. Yeah, they are growing massively big, and it's something that I think more investors and more companies should start thinking about. Is like, how do we capture that from life, right? Yeah,
Exactly. It's like, I wish I had some clue on that, on how to get to this. But if you think about numbers, one of the things, a small parenthesis, when I got into entrepreneurship, I think, man, I love Brazil. I went to Brazil 3 times, traveling solo, 3-4 weeks at a time, know it very well. And I said, man, we're thinking about the next great idea, but if I could sell an app, €1 per person in Brazil is like how many people? 190 million, I think. Think about the numbers. Just make the numbers. Think about Africa. It's a huge continent. And exactly, not we, you and I, but in Europe, many players still look at Africa as Africa. It's a country there. First of all, a lot of time you will hear talking about Africa as a country, or as just a huge continent. We don't remember how many countries, but a lot, with a lot of variety, internal clashes, internal different cultures. So, yes, it is a very segmented market, but probably less segmented than Europe to some extent. And it's a huge market, and they still not look at that as the next big thing. And when you mention about apps, it gives me a smile, because I've been to Kenya 10 times, and also, just not for holidays, a couple of times for some, it was connecting holidays with some business meetings, and also I have been supporting a volunteering project down there. So I also got to know, the tourist side, which is absolutely marvelous. Got to know a bit of the business side, very little, but it's already a bite of how it works. And even the internal areas and land where most tourists would not go, or the vast majority would not go. And when you go to these rural areas where in some cases it had not been raining for 2 years in a row, and still find a way to make things happen and to make agriculture somehow, you will find no water, no electricity, but you will find 2 things: Coca-Cola. And I wonder how awful it should taste, Coca-Cola, with 40 degrees outside and no refrigerator, but still you can find Coca-Cola, you can find Coke, and that's pretty impressive. And the second thing you will find are mobile phones, because in a very unstructured country, very unstructured infrastructure, what really helps is mobile phones. Talking about back in time, talking about early 2000s, so they don't have smartphones. They didn't have smartphones. But with that, someone with a great business mindset created now we call it a fintech system, which is called M-Pesa. Have you ever heard about that?
Exactly.
It was built in Kenya, and it's up to date, still today. I can't believe how efficient that is, and how widespread and fast and common to use. You go to a water kiosk almost in the middle of nowhere, because they have water in bottles. It's almost in the middle of nowhere, not literally. And we have M-Pesa, yes, paid. Yes, I need cash, okay? Send M-Pesa, I give you cash.
People were struggling with the whole concept in Europe. Like, why am I replacing my card or my cash with just paying with my phone? Only after Apple Pay came along, where people actually got the whole concept. Before that, people were not getting the concept. Like, why should I use this? Well, because you pay less to the bank. Really? No, I don't do that. So, yeah.
Well, the whole concept of paying less to the bank is pretty tricky. here in Europe, and also about systems like M-Pesa or other systems that are much so immediate to have a monetary exchange. And people will say like, well, okay, I think it's fine for me. They don't understand what fees are paying in the bank, what are the delays in trying money transfer, or they're simply not interested. There's more and more awareness. But for example, when I moved, June 2017, I moved from London to Rotterdam. And I could not believe that the Netherlands, a country that has historically been so strong in banking and that make finance and banking one of their main activities basically as a country, still had to pay for a bank transfer, and it was not immediate.
You should go to Portugal. It's the same thing. It drives me nuts every time I go there.
Exactly, but I mean, in Italy, they're getting better now. They're still not there yet, not all banks. But again, as we were mentioning before, Italy is not a country where innovation and entrepreneurship is so high. They have stronger points, like industry, factories, etc. Telecommunications is very strong, not talk about tourism and food, which even Italians and even some ministers mention that as, we should rely on this. Yeah, you could rely on this as a part of your strategy, but you can't solely rely on tourism and food. I mean, let's be serious. Let's be absolutely serious, especially in a country that was on the G7 and had an industrial background which was absolutely strong. And now you're trying to destroy it just by saying, we should rely on tourism and food. No, what about infrastructure, entrepreneurship? When I say entrepreneurship, I mean not just startups in this case, but I mean businesses, helping big businesses, big companies, medium big companies, allowing them better bureaucracy or more lean bureaucracy and all the kind of, I won't say facilitation in terms of easing their lives, but there are a lot of complications, unnecessary complications for a business owner, especially for big businesses, that shouldn't be there if you want the business to flourish.
But Italy produces so much stuff. I mean, I'm just thinking historically, you have the car manufacturers in Italy, huge. You have things like the aeronautical industry, and also your ship production. These are all major industries, and Italy has been a major, European powerhouse and global powerhouse for many decades, many centuries actually. If I'm Italian, I'm just thinking, how can we get more of this? How can we get more?
No, yes, but no, because many Italians, including again politicians and ministries, are thinking about, okay, that's something we should maintain, but I mean, I have the impression it's not a huge focus on this. It is changing lately, but still not that much. I mean, if you don't have industries, if you don't have the industry, if you don't have factories, you don't have those big businesses, what's left? Governmental employments, which, I mean, let's keep how efficient they are and how useful they are, because a huge conversation around this is pretty complex. And the second one is tourism and food. So what do they do? The functionaries, tourism and food. Country cannot sustain itself on this. So there is huge need to be competitive again, just pushing more, helping more, trying to have strategies and investments and incentives for industries, factories, businesses, because they're the one who hire people. They give work to other people. They make the economy turn. If you make very difficult for a business to sustain itself, then it's, I mean, the economy does not flow. I mean, it's as simple as it goes.
I love talking with you, but going back to your work with startups, can you tell me more about it? You get into the company. What exactly do you bring on board with?
Different ways. One thing I like to do as a person. One thing that makes me happy and it feels absolutely natural to me is mentoring. So that's mentoring is a bit different from coaching. I also do coaching, but mentoring is more like, okay, I've been there, done that. I've done something similar, and I'll give you my perspective, which is turning really useful in two cases, in startups and with middle and high managers in companies, because what for me is absolutely normal, and I say with very humbly, is I had to get out beyond the imposter syndrome to say what's normal for me is not so normal for other people, is to having lived and worked in 5 different countries, a huge US corporate and small niche company. So different levels of company, different size of company, with clients almost literally worldwide. I mean, in all continents for sure. And this is something that is pretty valuable to some people who look at it and say, okay, I know I'm not perfect. I know I don't have all the answers. And that's mentoring is not about having all the answers. It's about, I've seen different things. Let's exchange ideas, see a different perspective. Ask those tricky questions that make you think better about something and maybe give you the haha moment. And so when I started getting involved with startups, it was a bit like this. It was I first started with an incubator, then got into an you know, how, especially in Spain, as we mentioned, it goes by referral. Oh, Dr. Giulio is great at this. Okay, start getting an incubator, then an accelerator. Then I got into the IE, Instituto de Empresa, is a MBA, is a business school. So they have a special path for entrepreneurial MBA and giving advice and mentoring to startups in the business school. And that's great, because that's a part of, first of all, giving back. Then it really makes me, I mean, it fascinates me. I got the great opportunity of getting to know people that have so many ideas that will say, man, that's incredible. How could you have that idea? Or they have so much certainty and drive to bring that idea forward. They say, man, I admire your drive. And also to listen to new ideas that I would have never thought of. So that would say mentoring is a two-way thing. I mean, just having these wow moments and having this great thing is, for me, it's absolutely enriching. And the good thing, of course, getting beyond the imposter syndrome, is that my expertise, that for me is absolutely normal. For other people, it's like they look at that and say, okay, and I would never have thought of that. I mean, how you got out of the situation in that way? Or in some cases, of course, it's also about vulnerability. So I share, okay, guys, I did this, it went bad or really bad. Don't try this at home. Or I tried this, it went bad for this reason, so maybe use it with caution and integrate this with this other technique. And it's absolutely fascinating. Talking about the imposter syndrome, sometimes it's a bit challenging, because I find myself there and I look at this. It's not always young, because there's a myth that startup is a world for young people only. And by the way, the stats tell us that the best age to succeed in a startup is 43 years old.
So not 20, and you don't need to, be Mark Zuckerberg or something like that. You can actually...
Exactly. I mean, it can be, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. So I'm there and I look at these young people, super motivated, super, I'm going to eat the world kind of attitude. And I'm like, who am I to give advice to these guys?
Yeah.
Seriously. But then again, since it's a two-way thing, it's always been really enriching. And I found myself giving advice on marketing. I mean, I generally master quite well for what I do, all the verticals of the company, because I'm mostly into operations and processes, but this means that I need to understand how customer service works, how sales works, how finances go, because at the end of the day, that's what gives us bread to eat, and all other areas. But marketing, it's really not much my thing. But I found myself giving advice on marketing strategies, and like people were like flabbergasted to say, how do you know this? How do you think about that? And it's just experience with different companies. I mean, you're running one. I mean, that's one of my former business coaches used to say. I mean, it was very straightforward. It's like, you run a company, right? Yes. And how hard it is? It's very hard. Do you find yourself struggling to make some decisions and understand how to make things? Yes. Do you have time? Do you have a lot of spare time? No. So do you think your experience is great to manage your company because all the dedication you put and all the experience you're getting from this company? Yes. Well, think about me, that I manage or co-manage or advise in 15 different companies at a time. It's like, boom. I wouldn't be so brave. I wouldn't be so direct. I wouldn't be so daring. But there's some truth to when you've seen different things, different companies in different countries, in different stages, in different phases. I don't even, if you ask me what did I learn, I don't know. But what I know for a fact, what I know for sure is that when you present me to a problem, I will see it from, my brain will automatically see it from different angles and try to find different solutions that are not just the standard solution, and trying to poke a bit in different directions to see where it goes. And that's something I'm absolutely love. And back to the imposter syndrome, sometimes there are some startups, and it's very difficult being a mentor or an advisor at a startup, because some of them, since they are so young, so motivated, so yes, our solution is going to change the world. And sometimes I'm not very willing to listen. And that's tricky. And sometimes I found myself in situation, and I'm talking about just Madrid ecosystem. So think about, what I'm going to say, and scale it at country level or a continent level or world level. We are presenting this solution, ABC, that's great, and nobody does this. So, well, I've been to another incubator last week. Someone is doing exactly the same thing, and it's basically the same way. Guys, I would strongly suggest that the two of you get in touch, because I know you want to have your own idea, and how strong this desire, your ego, even a bit of ego involved, to have your own idea out to the world. Here you're just doing two very similar things. Even if it's just exchanging ideas, I really suggest that you meet up and talk. And the ideal outcome would be that you find a way to collaborate, to cooperate, because you can get something great out. It's much easier if you have the contacts of both of you and you have the ideas mixed and mingled, than if you go alone and they say, no, that's not possible, we will do it differently, without even knowing what exactly the other party does.
It's like Marconi and Alexander Bell, right? They both done the same thing at the same time. And I was like, well, hold on.
Well, back then it was so difficult on one hand, it was more difficult for technological and distance reasons. On the other hand, it was maybe more probable people would say, oh, okay, so we're not so many inventors in the world. There's someone doing something similar in the United States. Better look at what he's doing. And the other thing I found about the imposter syndrome, and getting back to the same one, is that sometimes some of these super energized entrepreneurs or startuppers, as we call them, they just say, sometimes they say very lightly or very firmly. I would say the most firm way a guy once told me, it was a friend, so it was not meaning to be mean, but it was like, Giulio, if you're so great at being an interim manager, interim executive, mentoring executives, advising startups, why don't you start your own business? I was like, dude, you're just poking, you're just rubbing the finger in like, am I legit at what I'm doing? And then I'm a very reflexive guy, so instead of jumping at his throat, I was just reflecting. I said, okay, I understand your question, and it makes sense. And at the same time, I think I've got different skills and different characteristics. What this guy is doing, setting up a startup and having this great innovative idea, I probably will not be that good at that. Whereas he will not be that good at understanding how management works, how to organize the work, how to make work efficient, how to organize operations, and now to have a big picture and get all the cogs, put them together, and make the work in a smooth way. And also, maybe I could do that, but doesn't mean that's the best thing I could do. It's like if you say, Giulio, you said that one of the examples you managed to, with just a couple of hours consulting, you managed to lower the cost of a factory in Ecuador by 6%. Real fact. I feel so good at that. Why don't you become a CFO? I'm not a CFO. I'm not even close to the CFO. Yes, I can give advice that impacts, that helps finance, but I'm not CFO. I'm very different. I think there's some founders have this fire in them that makes things like, okay, we are so much better than the other because we are entrepreneurs. On one hand, it's true. On the other hand, it doesn't mean you're above all the other world. It's just entrepreneurship, especially today. Today, it's been a few years now. It's a team sport. The self-made entrepreneur, self-made millionaire, they still happen. It's a myth it's not a myth, it's a story from the United States of America. And many people got a self-made millionaire, self-made entrepreneur. They got to great results. It was a different time. The United States of America is not Europe. And now even in the United States of America is a different thing. Things have become so specialized that you don't have, apart from rare cases, you don't have someone who's great at artificial intelligence and marketing and whatever vertical. Even if you only talk about computer engineering and IT, when I got into it was relatively simple. Not as simple as before, but was relatively simple. Already when I got out of university a few years later, you already had different specializations that did not exist before. And I don't even mention how exponentially it grew along the time. So if you want someone to be very good at something, cannot be on all areas.
It's funny talking about self-made entrepreneurs and the growth of technology. And what I found from studying a lot of entrepreneurs is most of them have not been self-made. They've actually had a lot of help from a lot of people in different areas. And I was reading the biography of Arnold Schwarzenegger, and it says that people look at me as a self-made guy, but actually I'm not. I had the support from this guy and that person there and this person here. And had he not had that support, he would never made it. And he recognizes the value that they brought to his life. It's the same thing when you're launching a business. Everyone I talk to, I think the ones who are most successful are the ones who are willing to listen, willing to ask questions, and willing to take that advice on board. We're talking about the imposter syndrome, but being able to say, you know what, I don't know, let me go and ask for some direction, let me go and ask for help, it's a million times better than just knocking your head in every single wall you find until you manage to get through to it. It's not going to happen that quickly. So.
I love that you mentioned advisory board, because there is also a personal mission. Maybe it's too strong as a word, but it's a personal campaign that I'm trying to do, because in the UK it's pretty normal. I'm in a board of directors of a company, I'm in a board of advisors of another one, and I'm trying to get more roles on the board, because it's something that when I do that, I feel like at home, and people find a benefit. So it's this kind of ikigai thing. It's a win-win. It's win for me, it's win for society. I get paid for that. They get economical benefit from that. It's a win for everyone. But it's pretty tricky, because in the UK it's pretty normal. So some associations and groups for board of advisors, board of directors. And I see how in London, because I still look at London as if I were living there, but I'm not, so I still got attached to London emotionally. And I see how many things come out there: board of advisors, trustee, board of directors, different roles. Every week there's something coming out. Something, a lot. Spain, Italy, silence. It's not normal for a company to have a board of advisor. They may have a board of director, and this happens in two cases. If they are indexed in the stock exchange. So if they are go public, they need to have actionaries and then shareholders, and so they need to have board of directors. Or if it's a family business, which is even worse. I made a post to shake a little bit the system the other week. Board of director is not a board of your family is not a board of advisor. It's not. It's actually worse than having a board of advisor. Not having that, because you have internal conflicts, internal politics, communication issues. You might not want to say this to avoid hurting the feelings or impacting the relationship with the other person. So it's a board of director because you have your sister, your cousin, and your father on the board. But there's a board of directors, which is not a board of advisors, first of all, and it's not an independent board of directors. So you don't have independent advice. You don't have someone looking at knowing how things are going in the industry and in the world out there and giving independent, unbiased advice, which sometimes can backfire. And sometimes I found myself giving some sound advice and being treated not in a nice way because they didn't like what I'm saying, but that's my role. Not getting told words, but saying something that is maybe uncomfortable or unpleasant, surfacing something, bringing out to light something that maybe we don't want to discuss now, but then eventually we need to discuss.
But that's why you have them in the first place, isn't it? Because it's a bit like, if you think about the classical war games, for example, there's a reason why people do war games. And the reason is you need to have someone telling you uncomfortable truth and seeing how you're going to handle them. So if you have that in the board of advisors, and people say, what about this angle, that angle, what about that track? Then you're like, okay, no, yes, no, and then you try to navigate that. That actually makes you better suited to run the business. That if everyone's saying, oh, everything's going to be wonderful,
exactly,
it's never going to rain, it's going to be sunshine all the time. Well, actually, no, it's going to rain. Prepare for that eventuality. Buy yourself an umbrella. How does it look like? What if it rains for the rest of the month? So things like that make a huge difference.
I mean, now that you say that, it comes a metaphor to mind. Just made it up. I mean, not having a board of advisor is like hiding the dust below the carpet.
Yeah, exactly.
Eventually it comes out. I mean, I'm trying to connect with more people, more advisors internationally, not only in Italy and Spain, to create more awareness, to stop publishing articles, publishing on LinkedIn, making videos, not me alone, not just myself, but other people, to create awareness, to people get more kind of this, they get more sensitive to this kind of topic, and they start understanding maybe it's a good thing to have. Because here's really not a thing, and when they have it, in most cases, I was in a meeting just 3 weeks ago here in Madrid, and they were saying, yes, someone who made a book about board of directors and board of advisors, Spanish, knows the Spanish ecosystem very well, he sits on different boards, said, man, most of the boards, people are, as they call it in Spain, palmeros, which means people who clap their hands. They're just clappers, they're just there and say, oh yeah, very brilliant decision. Did you, maybe they put this mini challenge like, oh, did you think about this in slight different nuance of thing? Yeah, but that's not a board of advisors. That's someone who, those are supporters. You're creating a lobby, you're creating a clique at a direction level to support what you're doing.
If I may make
which can make sense, but
my background, I have a little bit of background in aviation, and one of the things they always talk about, and I used to work for the Portuguese airline, which has a very, very strong safety culture. It's one of the top 10 safest airlines in the world.
Nice to know.
One of the things that they always say is, think of it as an iceberg, and the iceberg is this. It's gigantic on the bottom, and you only see the tip of the iceberg, and the tip of the iceberg is actually what's going to cause the accident or the disaster or whatever it might be. But there's so much underneath the water that you cannot see. So the whole culture of this airline is built around, let's identify the bottom of the iceberg before it becomes a problem. So you have so many mechanisms built in that actually enable you to say, look, this is all working here, I want to report this, I want to report that, before it gets to an actual accident or an actual disaster. And I think a lot of companies are lacking that. And by not having a board of advisors, it's the same thing, isn't it? You're only looking for, I can see the iceberg. If you can see the iceberg, then you have a major problem because you haven't been able to identify everything below it. And that's where, the solution also lies. Trying to figure the way around, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a great example. And I was thinking along, and in actual fact, I can also see many companies, to be honest, struggling a bit. So in the day-to-day activities, in the daily activities, and so they say, oh, man, I've seen there's an iceberg there. I've seen there's an iceberg there, The other one you mentioned, I don't see that. It's too far away. I'm just thinking about surviving the next 2 months, and you're thinking about the next 2 years. So I don't see that far, and I'm just seeing those icebergs that you mentioned. I know about them, but they, as you say, they don't realize that if they see the iceberg, then there's much more they do not see that should be brought up to light. And the second thing, as I say, since they are struggling, they just can't take their head up and have the time and effort to do something about it. It's just they're so stressed with the duties and the payments and the invoices and providing services to customer and arranging their own internal things that they feel they can't. And that's a paradox, because if you had different strategic guidance, you probably ease off some of these problems and you could drive in a smoother way, or you could navigate smoothly. But since you don't take the time, you keep on being in the same washing machine again and again.
Julie, as we're reaching the end of the podcast, if people want to reach out to you and find more about everything you do, how can you do so? What's the best idea?
Well, I would say, first of all, on LinkedIn, Giulio Zecca. I try to post somewhat regularly about entrepreneurship, management, good practices, operations, and even some of the more, we discussed today topics that touch upon these points, but a bit more elaborated, or they get to a bigger extent and a bigger reach than just that. I love, for example, talking about socioeconomic impact of business and what the governments could do about this. Not talking about politics at all, but there are some measures that doesn't matter what government, but could support entrepreneurship and good businesses and good companies. So LinkedIn for sure. I think that's the first approach. And then with platform like yours, I really loved being on your podcast. So thanks very much. Hope you had a great conversation. What do you think about, my last question to you, if I have 2 minutes, what do you think about, since it's part of my mission, as I said, how do you think that we could make this concept of board of advisors more widespread in Europe, or in Southern Europe?
Well, having a Portuguese background does help, obviously. I think it comes down to one thing: is we need to understand that failure is part of life, and that being wrong is something that happens a lot of times. And going back to the aviation analysis, the plane is actually not pointing the right direction 99% of the time. It's not pointing, let's say you want to go from London to Madrid. It's not a straight line. In fact, there's a couple of variants in the angle all times. It's the same thing in life and business. So being aware of that, and being aware, actually, I need some advisors to make sure that I'm on the correct path, and they can guide me on the way to my journey, or the best way to achieve my destination. That's key. So I would just, reinforce that message over and over again with people, saying you're going to make mistakes. But as long as you keep on asking questions, as long as you realize you are going to make mistakes, you're not going to be 100% sure all the time, that's completely fine. You can still continue growing your business. Because when it comes down to it, it's your determination, it's your grit, it's your passion. That's the things that you need to be strong at. Not knowing the answer, that's completely fine, because you're never going to know the answer fully. It might be the right answer right now, but it's not going to be the right answer forever. So just accept that and move on.
I absolutely love that you mentioned not having the right answer. And it's something I mention in most of my mentorship sessions. It's like, people don't like when I say this, to be honest, but if you think about that, there's no other way. As society is now, good or bad, right or wrong, is not society, in companies. So how the structure works, it's a pyramid. You have that many people entry level and you only have one CEO. And the pyramid narrows up until you get to the CEO level. People don't like when I say this. I'm not saying it's good. I'm not saying I like it. I'm just step beyond this conversation. But this is how it is. So when you get to the entry level, you got a lot of peers you can talk to and have exchange ideas. Plus you have different layers or tiers above you, because I don't like this above and below. But if you look at the hierarchy as it is now, this considered as above and below, you have N plus 1, 2, 3, 4 levels where you can get inspiration, you can get guidance, you can get better and higher level ideas. As the more you grow, the less you have peers, worldwide, not just in the company. And when you get to the top of the pyramid, you're just alone at the top of the company, and you can't ask for guidance to the guys that are your direct reports, can you?
Actually,
it's like you go to the project manager and say, what do you think about this strategy decision for the company? Should we accept this investor or not?
Well, this is an interesting thing, because I've actually changed the perspective on this one for myself, which is the CEO is not a know-it-all. The CEO is a manager of resources, in my perspective. And that means getting the best possible solution. The best possible solution might not come from your own personal opinion, but might actually be coming from the project manager. It might be coming in from the floor manager if you're running a gigantic factory.
Exactly. But that's for the level of decisions that need to come upstream. And I absolutely back 100%, 200% what you're saying, having been a project manager and program manager for a few years, absolutely back up what you're saying. But the point is there are some decisions that only that level can make. And so when you're there and you're the person on top of the pyramid, as John Maxwell, huge leadership trainer, guru, expert, call it however you want, says if you're alone at the top, you're doing something wrong. That's the thing. When you're CEO and you need to take CEO level decisions, which the ones who do not come upstream, and it's only up to you, your responsibility, it's, of course, you listen to your reports, but then it's your decision. You need to know. And if you're alone, you shouldn't be alone. It's like the more you grow, the more you need to find a system that supports you of peers. There are associations, there are clubs, there are organizations, and there are board of advisors. So I would close the podcast with an invitation. If you're looking for, because you said, how can people reach me out? If you're looking for mentorship or even to know about mentorship, business coaching, management consulting, startup investment, but especially if you're curious about the concept of board of advisors, to reach out to Ricardo or to me, and we'll be very happy to guide you through this experience. It doesn't mean that Ricardo or I will be on your board, but just the concept alone of explaining what the advantages are and how to set it up and how to support during this journey, it's absolutely great. And to talk about the benefits very, very quickly, we know that there are some really pragmatic benefits, like increasing productivity about 20%. There's increase in income about 18%. There is increase in sales. So these are all studied, measured. There's measurable impact in difference from companies who do not have board of advisors and the ones who do. So that's facts. That's out there. I think I can speak for you as well. We invite you to really consider this thing, especially if you're a young startup, but in general, whatever stage of entrepreneurship you are, that's something that's going to really support your mission.
Thank you so much for that. I really appreciate it.
Thanks to you.
The podcast is also sponsored by Notion.so. Notion is offering 6 months for free for new users. Make sure you check out our website, thestartupevents.co.uk, to redeem this offer. This podcast is also sponsored by startupnetworks.co.uk. Startup Networks, it's an online forum where you can find all the resources you need to run your startup, from grants to investors to tips and tricks on how to be successful in your startup. This podcast is also sponsored by ODEV Tech. ODEV Tech is your premier software development partner. Make sure you check them out at odev.tech.